we are doing sound in a time of COVID. That means that spraying the mics down with alcohol is vital. It's going to slow things down a little bit. You might have to remind people. People just want to talk and be passionate about their speeches, but spraying them down is so important. Some people say that sharing a mic is like sharing a lollipop. So we are going to be using alcohol, 70% or above. You can just use any kind of generic alcohol spray. They have sprays that are for mics, but they are actually not great, and they're not high enough alcohol content to kill COVID. So ideally we're doing this in between every speaker because, and don't worry about hurting the mic. We even have this little windscreen, which is $3 if you're worried about hurting the mic. We're gonna do 3 sprays on the head and on here too, anywhere the person is touching it. Mics are cheap. Human lives are very important. One for extra measure.
It's also a good idea to have 2 microphones. That way one can belong to the MC and the other to the person speaking. And it'll accelerate your handoff times. Yeah, so I can be like, hey, here's X who's gonna lead some chants.
Right. So I'm gonna flip my mic on. It's a good idea to remind people that there's a switch because sometimes they'll be thrown by that. All right, let's do a chant. The people united will never be defeated. The people united will never be defeated.
Woo! So the important thing to note is that some people speak quietly and some people speak loud. And just because you're not feeding back on someone who's speaking quietly doesn't mean that you won't feed back on someone who's speaking loud. Because if they speak louder, it'll come out of the speaker louder. And if that sound makes its way back to the microphone, that's what causes the feedback loop. It's just the sound going around and around in the loop, getting louder and louder every time. So some mixers, like this one, has a feature called compression, which essentially takes everything you say, and if it goes over a certain level, it will actually compress it. Ah! Ah! That little red light tells you that it's swooshing it down. And that's really useful because some people, especially at demos, are going to yell into the microphone, which isn't a problem as long as you're there to adjust it, and it doesn't cause feedback.
Great, so some tips to prevent feedback. The first thing is going to be to keep that mic really close to your face. We're sanitizing, we're wearing masks, so it's okay. The further away it is from your face, the less you can hear, and also the more you'll have to turn up the gain, which will make the feedback more frequent. The other thing is to position, set your speakers up for success by letting them know to keep it close to their face, and also by setting up the speakers in a way that the person talking is never in front of them. So if I were to move backwards and that I was going to be in range of that speaker, it would pick up on itself, it would make feedback. One way to really quickly cut out feedback on the speaker end is to just turn the mic off, turn it back on, and then if you're at the mixer, you can also feedback. It can keep going and it's really loud. You can just turn the volume down really fast.
If you're doing a demo during COVID, often people who want to speak aren't going to be present. So one thing you might want to do is have people call in. And I recommend my friend X over here, say hello.
Hello.
Perfect. Push mute. Essentially, any call app can work. The things you want to remind people is that you want them to mute whenever they're not speaking, because everything they say goes out on the horns. What's cool is that I can give them instructions without it coming out of the speaker. But one thing to keep in mind is unless you absolutely have to, like if someone's calling from a prison or if they don't have a smartphone, you want to use a digital service like FaceTime audio. So yeah, if you can find a dedicated phone just to run music and to run calls, that's great. We often we'll do a Zoom call, but the same thing. Everybody on the call needs to know that if they're not speaking, they need to be muted. Again, the quality is just so much better if people use anything but a telephone. If they use, Signal audio, WhatsApp audio, Skype audio, Zoom audio, anything is going to have better quality than a phone call. But a phone call is the same concept. You just plug the headphone jack, headphone cable into the phone. If you have a newer iPhone, you need to get one of those fucking adapters. And you plug that into the mixer, and then you have clean sound. There's several ways you can plug a phone into a mixer. Very few mixers have. This one happens to have an 1/8 inch input. 1/8 inch is the input that phones had until iPhones ruined it. You can adapt to XLR, you can adapt to 1/4 inch, or you can adapt to RCA. And we have a whole post about those different adapters. But yeah, it's very frequent that you have people calling in remotely, or that you're going to have music, and being able to mix between remote people, present people, people's music, other people's phones. Sometimes people can show up with laptops or even instruments or DJ decks. It's good to have a good assortment of cables and to get to know your mixer really well, so you can make that happen without much delay.